Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. Been a week since we had a wee chat. Hope you and yours are all well. Another eventful week. And I actually got an email earlier in the week to say from a Trevelyan Montague the third, if I would discuss the Gers, which I thought was which was a rather strange request, but being a unionist. So okay, I'll do that just quickly, and then go into important things because Gers. So last Saturday we played Livingston, then we played Servette, and then we played Morton in the League Cup. Here, I've covered Gers. Is that what you wanted, Trevelyan? On your bike, son. It's of no importance. It's a load of nonsense. So let's get the team in. Let's start. Eva there in Clickmannanshire. How are you doing?
Hi, Roddy. Another good busy week and a busy weekend. Obviously, we're recording this on Saturday. People are watching on Sunday. So can I remind everybody that not only is Alba particularly devoted to the question of Scottish independence with urgency, we're also very strong and very firm in relation to the rights of women. So those women in Alba who have not yet registered for our meeting, it's Sunday, the day you're watching this, the 20th of August at 5 p.m. Get online and get registered to get the link to join, because Yvonne Ridley, as our women's convener, and I, as Equalities, have got a lot to say and we want to hear your views. Thank you.
Hey, boy, get your advert in early, hen. That's what I say. Quite right too. And then we might as well get your partner in crime on right away too. How are you going down there on the borders? There's Shirley Temple. How are you?
Roddy. Yes, I'm fine. Well, as usual, I'm in lockstep with Eva and agree with everything that she says. But there's a 12 noon deadline, so get in before then. And we'll see you at the women's meeting tomorrow.
Okay, and excellent. And of course, making up the final part of this jigsaw today, it's our Lloyd over there in Edinburgh. Lloyd, how are you?
I'm very well, Roddy. Very well.
Good. Well, I'm sorry, we don't have our Phil in North Dakota. He is unavailable to join us. He may join us, but we think unlikely. But anyway, let's just kick off right away because the clock's already ticking. And that clock always beats us. Starting this week, which I found quite upsetting, Eva, was our First Minister who informed the world that getting a referendum was going to be more difficult than actually winning it. That's what you call admitting defeat before you start, is it not?
I want to be sure that I'm quoting verbatim here. This is hugely disappointing. The headline was in the article, getting an independence referendum, as your graphic says, will be harder than winning one. Humza Yousaf has said, getting Westminster to grant another vote on Scottish independence will be harder than winning it. Speaking at a live recording of a podcast in Edinburgh, he told the audience he had to be upfront with members. He said, there is no getting away from the fact that there is no shortcut if the UK government continues to deny us the referendum. I don't think winning it is the most difficult part. Getting the referendum is the most difficult part. So there you have it. He thinks that there's actually within Scotland a majority in favour of Scottish independence and that if we had a referendum we would win. But he's said very plainly that he does not expect the UK government to cede that power to us. Well, we know that already. We knew that in the context of the application to the Supreme Court. But what Humza's also done is that he's confirmed yet again that the Scotland United approach is the correct one, both in the context of general elections for Westminster and also in the context of elections to Holyrood. He's made it crystal clear that he does not believe we'll get a referendum from the UK government. So if we're not getting a referendum, we have to look at achieving independence by another method. That method ought to include a constitutional convention set up now, whereby all independence supporting parties get together with Civic Scotland and create a pathway towards an electoral event when we can indeed vote for independence, because it's clearly not going to be a referendum. And in this regard, Humza's right, we're not getting one.
Now, Lloyd, is Humza and his leadership the only people left in the whole of the independence movement that think a British or English Prime Minister is ever going to grant a Section 30 for a referendum ever again? Why are we still beating this drum about referendum?
Because there is no strategy. Because there probably is a strategy, but there's no honesty around the strategy. We currently have a First Minister who appears to think the witty quip is more important than taking our country to its independence. We seem to have a First Minister who thinks that whatever he says is instantly true and the pearls of wisdom. It's been a depressing week from this point of view. If you actually analyse what he said, it would be harder to get a referendum than to win a referendum. Does that not beg the question then, you need a different strategy? And wouldn't you, out of that sentence, have a strategy? A strategy is dictated to you by that sentence. That sentence says the referendum is not happening, but, as Eva said, the majority of the people will vote for independence. That's encapsulated in that sentence. So what is obvious to anybody who thinks before they speak, that the next Scottish Parliament election, I would suggest, is the event whereby a vote for an independence party is a vote for independence. Exactly what it used to say on my Scottish National Party membership card up until 1999. A majority of votes or a majority of seats is the immediate trigger for negotiation of our withdrawal from the Union. Does Humza Yousaf, First Minister of this country and Scottish National Party leader, not understand that? To me, it seems he doesn't understand that. That's why this week has been a hard week, listening to people who are hard of thinking, talking about the most important thing for this country and the people's future. It's a disgrace.
Yvonne, if the leader, the de facto leader of the independence movement, and while a lot of our people will complain and in the comments will not agree, but whether we like it or not, at the moment, the SNP, and by that, their leader is the de facto leader of the independence movement. Not all to all of our likings, but when he's saying, well, you know, trying to prepare us that it's too difficult, it doesn't exactly instill confidence in the troops out there, does it?
Not at all. I just keep getting this image in my head of Humza sitting under fire in a World War I trench, waving a white flag. And as Lloyd said, you know, he's more interested in scoring points by one-liners, and you know, he's not a comedian, he's the First Minister. And as Ian McWhirter in The Spectator said, when it comes to annoying people, the First Minister is a veritable virtuoso. And I can't agree more. You know, he really is out of touch with his audience. He's about as funny as thrush on a honeymoon.
Oh my goodness gracious me. That didn't take long. Eva, if he's admitting that the referendum is, you know, so difficult, can't be done, and I mean, if he put it, the greatest politician ever lived was his predecessor and couldn't get one, how could he get one? Why doesn't he then just say we're going plebiscite, as Lloyd's alluded to? That should just be the way from here on in. I happen to think we should do to every election, every single UK general election or Scottish general election, we should turn into a plebiscite. Why doesn't he do that? Is that not the obvious move?
That's the obvious move if you're putting country first, if you're putting country before party. And thus far, the evidence that we've seen from Humza Yousaf and his predecessor is that they are disinclined so to do, or have become disinclined so to do, since attaining high power and leadership. Obviously, that was not the position earlier, when I don't think anybody ever doubted that Alex Salmond and the people around him, while he was leader, prioritised our country. And they took Scotland into such wonderful places over the course of that period from 2007 to at least the end of 2014. but from 2015 until now, there have been too many mistakes made, which lead people within our independence movement to become so very demotivated and at times pretty depressed about the way that our country's future and the destiny of everybody in Scotland are being at times surrendered, perhaps for the sake of party gain or for individual gain. There is no other sensible, logical or political explanation as to why Scotland United or make every election a plebiscite aren't happening. They should be happening. I mean, I see there were comments from some of the usual suspects again about how Alba's the party of hatred. People are going to have to grow up. There is never any hatred on this programme. We're from all parties. Obviously, Lloyd is not a member of the Alba party. He's well known to be a former SNP MSP and an SNP member. But Lloyd or Phil and others who've appeared here who have SNP affiliations only share the concerns that most of the wider movement have, and I include within that SNP members, that we're all in it for the sake of our country, but there are concerns that some in leadership positions are not. When we had our equalities events recently, as I think I've said before, what was clear from everybody in the audience and all those people who took leaflets from us as we were publicising events in advance, or who messaged or asked questions, they're all wanting to know what it is that is preventing the SNP leadership and the Scottish Government from announcing a convention and a Scotland United initiative. In grassroots of every party, everybody supports this. People who are in no party but support independence support this. The only folk that don't support either Scotland United or a plebiscite at general election plus again in Holyrood are the leadership of the SNP. It is abundantly clear that the people of Scotland who support independence are in the majority, and to achieve the desires of the majority democratically, we need to have a democratic movement. A First Minister speaking to a closed shop of members of his party only is speaking to a very small minority of the Scottish population, and particularly a very small minority of the independence movement. The Rutherglen by-election, for example, should be a massive wake-up call to Humza. I know that we'll get onto this later, but it's perfectly clear from polling and from actions on this, or from reactions on the streets, that the SNP has lost popularity. It is continuing to lose popularity. We are risking allowing Labour to come in and take a seat that should have stayed with a woman who was elected to represent those constituents and did so very well. So Humza's made a lot of mistakes. He's going to continue to make them if he will not simply face the reality, which everybody here and everybody watching knows. Scotland will vote for independence when Scotland gets a democratic chance so to do, and that has got to come as the result of a plebiscitary election. There is no way around it, and the quicker that Humza realises that, the better, or he's going to find that his political legacy and the memory of Humza, if he's written into the textbooks at all in future years, will be not dissimilar to that of his predecessor, who will be asked, what did you achieve other than the, sorry Yvonne, baby box? Was the dial moved on the attainment of Scottish independence, or was it only that the SNP slipped in the polls despite the fact that the majority of the population continued to desire national liberty, because that's all it is?
Indeed. Lloyd, strange thing, Karen, Techie, can you put the headline with Karen Adams up there in the northeast, re-elected MSP? She was quoted as saying, Humza has breathed new life into the independence movement. We should be grateful. Did you notice this new life, and are you grateful?
I'm eternally grateful. I'm eternally grateful for Karen Adams saying another totally stupid thing that everybody in the country knows is utter and complete nonsense. But then again, you know, she is the comedic value from the northeast of the country represented in the parliament. Another bringer of mirth. Oh, this is where we're at. People who say things that they know, patently know, are not true. But because they've said them, therefore, it is true. This is the way the current parliamentary group in Holyrood, the majority of it, of the SNP, seems to behave. They seem to think that nobody can remember what happened yesterday or even 10 minutes ago. The idea that Cameron Adam genuinely believes that activists from the SNP across the country are out fighting the good fight, having the summer of independence, is just absolute, utter nonsense. But what she does know is she'll get a pat in the back from the Spads. She'll get a pat in the back from Humza's office simply for saying these things. But it's another example of how completely out of touch with the population they are. They're no longer talking to the population. They're trying desperately to shore up their own internal support within the party. And that's exemplified incredibly by the poor turnout of activists at the beginning of the Rutherglen campaign, as you can see from social media. I mean, I've been at this a long while. If you've got a by-election you really want to win, back in the day, the SNP would have 120 to 200 people a day on the street, in the constituency, coming from all over the country because they had fire in their belly about fighting to win for the country, not the party. That's gone. It's gone within the SNP. Let's hope it rises somewhere else. But
indeed. I mean, as you say, she might get a pat in the back from Humza and a pat in the back from the Spads, but I tell you what, there's an awful lot of SNP, MSPs and MPs about to get a boot in the arse from the voters if they don't waken up their ideas. And we've had this another opinion poll out this week, Yvonne, but again the gap is showing this 10 to 12% between those that support independence and those that support the SNP. It doesn't take it. We spoke about this every week or every month. They'll do it, but this particular poll shows that they can still get a majority with the help of the Greens. But if they don't start addressing the questions that are being asked about independence and how we're actually going to achieve it, that this is going to fritter away.
Well, I think Karen Adams is one of those who's going to have a real struggle hanging on to her seat. And she's already just outraged feminists like myself from comments made the other day urging women to show respect over the continuing debacle that is the GRR. And apparently she sits on something called the Gender Committee. And all she's doing is really rubbing up women the wrong way. And she will be probably one of the first out in the general election. She's going to struggle to keep her place. And yeah, so she's a person who's of no importance, basically.
Yeah, Eva. But some of the SNP people are waking up, and that great strategist, the man who sees all and knows everything, who has blocked so many of us for not seeing things as quickly as he does. Many people get blocked for saying Plan B. Pete Wishart, our Peety, has had another road to Damascus moment, has he not? Where he now says, oh yes, Angus was right. It turns out, after slagging Angus, that we do need a Plan B. And this is what I've known all along. He was saying in his article and how he'd seen it long before everybody else. It was quite a moment. I mean, I have to say my jaw was on the floor for about 20 minutes.
I've waited a long time to say this. Cheers, Pete. I agree with Pete Wishart.
Not often you hear that.
Today, when this has been recorded, I am not, nor have I ever been, blocked by Pete Wishart. I do hope that remains the case. So what he says in his item is, it's time to accept the UK won't agree to a referendum and we have to take this into our own hands. What more is there to say? Pete's right. We have to take it into our own hands. And what we have to do is what we're saying repeatedly we have to have Scotland United. Not only SNP votes, because as Pete knows, SNP votes might attain a majority of seats, they will not attain a majority of the vote. However, there is one area in which I have to correct Pete, and I hope that he doesn't block me for this. I hope that we can have some constructive dialogue about this, because he says in paragraph number 6 of his recent item, for the first time in 2021, we secured a parliament with an independence majority, clearly committed to holding a referendum. Could I just gently remind Pete that that's not actually particularly accurate? In fact, if I just find the particular message, there's a graphic which reminds us all that actually we first attained an independence majority in 2011. 2011, when Alex Salmond was the leader and had from 2007 to 2011 46 seats, having lost and having started that parliament with 47, and in 2011 won 69. That's a majority. 69 in 2011, won by the SNP, led by Alex Salmond. So 2021 was not the first time that a majority had been got. I sincerely hope it's not the last. I hope a majority is got there at the next Holyrood election, and that what Pete Wishart does is speak with his former colleague, but still independentista, Angus Brendan McNeill, and speak sensibly and constructively about how all of those who now agree that previous strategies are now consigned to history can create the strategy which will take this country forwards to that electoral event whereby people like Pete Wishart, Angus Brendan McNeill, dare I say it, John Nicholson and I, and perhaps even Dave Duggan and I, can share a platform and agree with each other that it's country before party every time. Let's the Scots show Westminster Scotland's time has come today. No more delays.
Indeed. But go back to the earlier point, just what you were talking about, Lloyd, when I said, we've got whom's are talking about referendums. We've got our Peety and a few others now talking about, yeah, well, that's a goner. It actually confirms what you're saying is there's no strategy, no planning, no communication. And is it any wonder the voters are saying, I'm just going to stay at home? Because there is no leadership, no strategy at all.
You're absolutely right, Roddy. But you know, I have a feeling that there is a strategy, but they've not found a way to break the news to the rest of the SNP, and that strategy is devolution max. And I think they don't even understand what that means, but they think it's a good kind of nail to hang the coat on. I think we're seeing the managed decline, and it's either managed decline with a purpose or it's managed decline by stupidity. And I can't work out quite yet which is which. But the simple, straightforward fact that the First Minister of this country, who is supposedly committed to the independence of the country and our immediate joining of the United Nations, doesn't understand or appears not to understand that the only way to deliver that is by setting out your stall on a Scotland United basis for the next election. I mean, my own personal belief is that to maximise our opportunity because of the change in the franchise, I would put, you know, all our eggs in the basket of the Scottish election. That gives us the time to prepare, also allows us to use the British general election as a platform to set out the platform. If you see that would be my, I mean, but that's just my opinion. I'm hardly the fount of all knowledge myself. But what is clear now, there is no strategy being discussed. The strategy for independence is not being discussed by the cabinet of the Scottish government. There's no question about that. They couldn't be saying the things that they're saying. I mean, one of the things that Hamza said off the cuff the other day was, in reference to the leader of the Alapa Party, Alex Salmond, was that he should carry on with his side project. What in goodness name does he mean by side project? Is side project independence? I'm baffled by this. I'm absolutely baffled. But then again, it's a fairly regular occurrence when we hear some of the utterances from the First Minister. It's interesting also, we're now into what, the third, fourth week of the incarceration of Imran Khan, and still nothing from Scotland's First Minister and a declared supporter of Imran Khan only a couple of years ago. Strange man, not a leader.
No, he is most certainly not that. But while we're on the subject of my pal Peety, it was not that long ago he was wanting to be the Speaker of the House of Commons, Yvonne. And we've had Stephen Flynn saying, they're going to fight this next general election on improving and securing devolution and getting a better. And it comes back to sort of kind of what Lloyd's hinting at, that they're maybe going down the devolution road. Now, these are things that are all bad enough. But I have to say, the cream of the cake for me this week was the talk that Ian Blackford wants to be an SNP Lord in the House of Lords. How did you take that news?
Well, I wasn't surprised. I mean, he is a man whose ambitions far outweigh and exceed his abilities. And the thought of him strutting around in the House of Lords saying the people of Scotland will not put up with this or the man is absolutely deluded. Is he on crack cocaine or something? It's just crazy that he's even thinking about joining the House of Lords. And I could actually see a prime minister full of mischief thinking, yeah, I'm going to put his name down on the list and show what a sellout these Scots are that are coming down to Westminster jumping on our gravy train. And I could actually see that happening. So
well, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, when I first heard it, I thought, oh, it's just some mischief making.
He's not coming out and denied
I would
it.
have refuted it, but he hasn't denied it.
No.
And as I say, those talk about settling down instead of settling up. There's one of them wants to be a speaker. Another one wants to be in the House of Lords. What next? What next?
You've got to remember we've had two SNP MPs wearing British Army fatigues and playing at British soldiers for a day. We've had Alan Smith and Stuart MacDonald in Kiev sitting behind a Union flag, a butcher's apron, spewing British foreign policy and pro-war. So nothing should really get surprising. And I have to say, I've got to say this now, I maybe shouldn't because it's going to set the place on fire. A few weeks ago, a very reliable source came to me and told me that Ian Blackford is not the only one that there's been discussions with about a peerage, not just a peerage. And I said, no, I don't believe that nonsense. But I was told other things. I remember before Alex's arrest, I went, no, I don't believe that. But this one told me, and I discounted it. But it seems that some of the SNP have been talking. Just so, don't ask me for names, folks. You're not going to get them, okay? But just take that as read.
We've still got the resigning list from Liz Truss to come out yet. We've had Boris's ridiculous list, which saw that very attractive leggy blonde walk into the House of Commons, the House of Lords at the age of 29. So, Liz Truss has no liking for Scotland, and this would be one real kiss off to Scotland, wouldn't it? If she...
I think it would finish the SNP. I really do.
Well, but they've got no filter. They are so out of touch with the grassroots people in Scotland. And they still believe they own the independence movement, which they don't. We know that independence in Scotland is on the rise, is going up. And as the independence movement is rising, the SNP is going down. I wonder why, with crackpot ideas like that.
Yeah, it's like, but while this is all going on, we shouldn't be forgetting about our friends in the Labour Party either. You know, if well, I've been watching. I mean, I think like 2017, when if you analyse the figures of that general election, the Tories didn't actually gain votes. They got votes from the Labour Party. As they do, they switch their votes to whoever. You paid attention, Humza. The Unionists passed their votes to whoever they think's the strongest one to beat. The dreaded FNP. You know, better together works two ways. But anyway, that said, they are. You know, the same's going to happen, in my opinion, in Rutherglen. I think the independence vote's going to stay at home. But we shouldn't forget, while Anis Sarwar is frantically trying to roll back just now on his commitment to the GRRB and also the rate clause, which the two of them have been, you know, they were so for one and so against the one, but now because Keir Starmer said they've fallen into line like the good little branch office. Why are you voting for them, folks?
Here's another thing I never thought I would say. I agree with Joanne Lamont, and I had enormous respect for her, and I think it was about November 19-ish when she signed the Labour Women's Declaration, along with other Labour women who were what we would now call gender critical. And Joanne and several of her colleagues, as we well know, joined with many other women in campaigns including Sex Matters and Women Won't Wheesht. And what I find is actually pretty offensive, quite frankly, is that Anis Sarwar is desperately trying to rewrite history. He's suggesting that we made a bit of a mess of the GRR bill, but that was somehow inevitable. Well, it wasn't inevitable at all. What happened was that very many people in his party throughout the UK, not just in Scotland, reminded him over and over again of all of the pitfalls of self-identification. This is about self-identification. It's not about anything else. And we know, because it has been proven over and over again, that self-identification of gender is not a good idea for all the reasons that have previously been canvassed. But where this is particularly difficult to thole is that Keir Starmer has obviously very recently had a Damascene conversion and seems now to have flipped again in respect of his views of gender recognition reform. And he's obviously had a word in Anas' ear. But the reality, if you check the record books and you look at the vote on the GRR bill, is that there were in the entire Labour cohort in Holyrood, the entire party in Holyrood, four MSPs that did not vote in favour of the GRR bill. The two who voted against, Carol Mochen and Claire Baker, and the two who abstained, Pauline McNeill and Michael Mara. That's because Anas required them to vote a certain way. He took decisions as the branch leader, and now that he's taken those decisions, which he realises are no longer in favour with his UK boss, he's having to slowly unravel. Now, he can't have it both ways. There were multiple amendments to that bill that his party could have chosen to support, and they signally failed so to do. They could have supported issues in relation to safety, single-sex spaces and the definition of sex as opposed to gender. They could have held the hand of friendship and allyship out towards gender-critical women within the Labour Party. Instead of doing that, they pilloried them, and he now thinks that somehow we're going to have a change of heart. Well, he's got a problem with his candidate in Rutherglen, because his candidate in Rutherglen is foursquare behind the GRR bill. And as I said, I think it was last week, the Labour candidate wants to be elected for Labour, for Rutherglen Hamilton West, so that he can go to Westminster and manage somehow to change Keir Starmer's mind on his new-found opposition to self-identification. It's not likely, but it's a reason why the men and women of that constituency and the whole of Scotland need to be able to elect politicians who know, A, what a woman is, and B, who will follow a mantra that says sex, not gender, in the context of sport, medical facilities, not the least would be prisons. So Anna's slight change of heart and a slightly apologetic look is nothing other than empty, almost snide, opportunistic political spin, because that's what his boss has told him has to be done. And he's betraying not only his MSPs who were whipped by him to vote a certain way, he's letting down his candidate in Rutherglen that he's been out campaigning for, because he's not listening to his views, which actually are the party's views, unfortunately. So Annas isn't two-faced. His head must be on a swivel, trying to keep up with all the different people to whom he seems to be beholden. So that on its own is pathetic in relation to gender recognition reform. In respect of the two-child rape clause, good God, if we cannot provide for families who have fallen upon difficult times by giving money to families who need to feed their children, where we know that the children might be fed as the result of mothers or single fathers doing without, then how far has the United Kingdom fallen? Where are the principles of these people? These people who are elected to represent constituencies in the poorest of areas, who earn 5 and 6 figure sums of money, who drink in bars that we subsidise, who eat food that we subsidise, who travel worldwide at a cost to the taxpayer when they could be making telephone calls and having Zoom sessions instead. And yet these very people, Keir Hardie, were he in a grave, would be spinning sufficient to keep the national grid going for the next couple of years if he saw what they have descended to. It is farcical, it's embarrassing. No wonder Jimmy Reid said the Labour Party left him. There should be an awful lot of people in the United Kingdom, and especially in Scotland, remembering those words now. It is not the party it used to be. It never will be that again. It lost Scotland's people a long time ago, and it deserves to be in the doldrums as far as political recognition is concerned.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, one of the things that Anna's tried to struggle with, weasel his way out was about the rape clause was, well, we're inheriting things in there, we don't know how the books are going to be, so we can't make any financial commitments. However, the day previous, Starmer said he was still going to be sending arms and ammunition to Ukraine, so we can afford to go and, kill people, but we can't afford to look after women who've possibly been raped or with 3 children in a family. Disgraceful. But there's another thing here, Lloyd. Politics is strange, and while Anna actually does go over the minutiae of policy and change of direction and all this stuff, the voters don't. It's a kind of tribal. I don't want to sound like one of these trans zealots, but it's a kind of feelings thing. Because the feeling, quite really, at the moment is the SNP aren't doing their job properly across a broad spectrum, and the people have got short memories. Have they forgotten why we got rid of Labour in the first place? But it seems that they're going to go back to Labour. They don't give us tuppenny about policies, do they? It's just feeling.
I think it's the only way people can instruct their politicians to get back on the right path. You give them a slap. I mean, when Margot won Govan in 1974, that was the Labour Party getting a slap from the people of Govan. When Jim won in 1988, that was the Scottish Peter, and that probably was the big turning point in terms of Labour shedding votes to the independence movement. I don't think people have got short memories. I think people have expectations. When the expectations are not met, then they take action. Over the many, many years when there was the total Labour hegemony in Scotland, the way it was turnout would tell you when people were not happy with their representatives. And that's eroded now to the point where I cannot see a return to that Labour hegemony. But then again, the SNP appear to have lost the opportunity to maintain its own absolute hegemony of the electorate because of the failed government of the past 8 years. That not delivering on what they say they're going to deliver. You will get punished for it. But I don't believe there's a hankering amongst the population to go back to Labour, most especially not when you have Keir Starmer at the front of it, and his approval ratings in Scotland are not high. I also think that in the same way as the SNP has been denuded of talent because of the 8 years of the despot, the Blair years and the wilderness years of the past 14 years of Tory government has completely denuded the Labour Party of talent, certainly in Scotland. That's patently obvious. And I don't see, even if they win, and I expect that they will win the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election, this is not a period of great recovery for the Labour Party in Scotland, unless the SNP continues to make the pathetic mistakes it's making.
Well, therein lies the problem, Yvonne. Do you see any hope of them stopping making these mistakes and getting with the programme?
I think these leaders are suffering from political amnesia. We've got Keir Starmer, who's done a U-turn on the GRR, and I'm just waiting yet to see if he's apologised to his own female MP, Rosie Duffield, yet, who he castigated and threw out into the boondocks for the last 3 years, allowing her to be hounded, very much in the same way as the SNP allowed Joanna Cherry to be hounded because of policies that they supported. And I was just reading this morning that apparently Tony Blair has a hotline to Keir Starmer. This is a man who created more than 1 million Iraqi widows and orphans. And people say, oh, you're not still going on about Iraq, are you? Yes, I am, because the fallout from Iraq continues to impact us today. And we just have to see all the refugees coming through on the boats. This all started with Iraq. So political amnesia. And this is something that we need voters to sit up and be much more savvy with and start to hold their leaders to account, because the big losers in all of this are the voters. Isn't it strange that Eddie Izzard has been silent since Keir Starmer did the U-turn? For those following the comedian, he announced, or she announced, that they will be running as Labour MP for Brighton Pavilion. Yes, he. Eddie Starmer. Well, what a combination. But Eddie Izzard, is not a woman and never will be a woman. And it doesn't matter if he calls himself Susie, he's still a man. So, political amnesia. And let's just hope that the voters don't get amnesia and start holding all of these to account. And I was so pleased that Lloyd mentioned Pakistan earlier on. Keir Starmer congratulated Pakistan on its National Day last week and made no mention at all to the fact that Pakistan has imprisoned its most popular leader since Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And of course, I'm talking about the legendary cricketer Imran Khan. And this is an absolute obscenity that Imran Khan is in prison on spurious charges of corruption in one of the most corrupt countries in the world, made corrupt and encouraged to be corrupt by America and its allies, i.e. Britain. And Starmer doesn't make any mention of that. He totally ignores the fact that from the overseas Pakistanis in the UK, 80% of them support Imran Khan. I don't know who's advising him. It's all very, very frustrating. Yes, Labour will almost certainly win the by-election, but there is no landslide victory of a Blair style on the horizon for Starmer. it'll be more a mudslide than a landslide.
The very fact that the SNP have done this willfully and have effectively gifted a seat to the unionists and given them a bit of momentum and impetus is quite, it's just quite extraordinary. But in these times, everything's quite extraordinary, Eva, and we have a terrible cancel culture that's going on everywhere. This week we had Graham Lynham, who was cancelled at the Leith Arches. Maybe he was to be replaced by Kay Adams, and that was a stand-up routine she did, Lloyd. I don't, we never know. But we've had Graham getting cancelled. And the other thing is they're trying to cancel a poster of the SNP, of the Alba Party. With the SNP poster up with Mrs. Thatcher first. Oh, well, there you go. I remember that one. Do you remember that one, Lloyd?
That was a great poster.
I remember it was a cracker. I delivered it. And the SNP, this is with the SNP. And now the Alapa one, which has suddenly been a company called Poster Global are trying to cancel. And the SNP are affronted by this this particular poster. Even double standards cancellation. Now, people might not like or dislike, but if we live in a democracy, and within, as long as we're not being massively offensive, there's too much cancellation, whether it be a Graham Lynham, whether it's the people that try to cancel Joanna Cherry because they don't believe what she believes or she doesn't believe what they believe. We've got to stop this cancel culture, haven't we?
There's too much cancellation, there's too much rewriting of history, and there's too much virtue signalling to certain groups and pandering to feelings, as opposed to understanding that we live in effect, a pluralist world, and we live in Scotland at the meantime in a democratic environment where people are entitled to make their views known, provided that they're not guilty of discrimination and various other types of conduct that might comprise crime. So short of crime, we have free speech, and we have it for good reason. And we often speak about how we don't like the views that others express, but we will, fight to the death to give them the freedom so to do. And that's what this is. I'm not a huge fan of that particular poster, but I can see that it, in essence, replicates the previous emphasis of the SNP poster in relation to how the Tories are not to be trusted and how they, in essence, would bleed Scotland dry because that's what they do. So that's the point of the poster. But it's cancellation of that, the cancellation earlier of Joanna Cherry, issues that there have been throughout the UK of people who were considered to be gender critical not being allowed to speak. All of that, the Graham Lynham position as well, reminds me of what happened, I think it would be in April in 22, during the local authority election campaign. And there was to be a wee Alba book event held in one of the universities in Aberdeen. And they cancelled it at the last minute on spurious grounds. They just didn't want Alba to appear. So the event took place outside in the street, and it wasn't just well attended. The videos about it went absolutely viral within the space of a few hours. And something similar happened to Graham Lynham, because he had the courage, despite being cancelled twice, to still come to Edinburgh and to speak outside Holyrood to everybody who wanted to listen to his views. And his views are valid views, they are legally held views, they are views he is absolutely entitled to express, and they boil down to him talking in terms of the reasons why we have single-sex rights and why we have an Equality Act at all, and what the values of that act actually comprise. But if you would indulge me, Roddy, I need to add in here a little addendum which has to do with cancellation up to a point, but also rewriting history, because it's come to my attention that earlier in the week when Humza Yousaf was being interviewed, he made a comment to the effect that he had, and I think he said, not been approached by Alex Salmond about an electoral proposal to do with Scotland United. So Alex actually written to Humza today, and the letter's been published. And Alex's letter says, "Dear Humza, I was surprised to see you quoted from the Edinburgh Festival that you'd had no approach from me with regard to an electoral proposal. This is untrue." There's your letter there, thank you. I've written to you directly and via your staff, made an approach. I've yet to receive a reply. If we wish to replace Labour, then we should do this and look properly at promoting the independence cause. So I think, as you said earlier, and I think we need to remember, politicians have got to stop trying to rewrite history. And the values that we have in the United Kingdom are being eroded by a Tory government. We should not allow those values to be eroded in Scotland, because I think that the Scots are far more capable of understanding and promoting free speech than perhaps some folk who are thrilled to Westminster necessarily are. So I hope that any leaflet from any political party, provided it does not cross the boundaries of the law, is able to be promoted wherever they wish. And it's not banned for political beliefs, because that is a slippery slope and it's something that we just don't want to be involved in.
Correct. It's maybe at that point where he mentioned Alex's side project that he was being dismissive. But these cancellations and things, Lloyd, invariably it comes back and haunts. I mean, the stupidity is you draw attention then to things like that. I've been speaking to some of the Alapa Party officials. That particular poster that was banned, it's been on the television, it's been getting debated everywhere. The publicity on it has been fantastic. So the idiots that tried to cancel it have actually given it arms and legs, and it's not the first time these things happen.
It's happened a lot of times, and certainly in the history of the SNP, you'll probably remember this one, Roddy, that caused quite a hoo-ha. Join the Scottish Resistance.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That one caused quite a hoo-ha, but, you know, there's a really serious side to this. I think, you know, nobody wants the Sunak poster because it's too truthful. You know, let's forget any possible suggestions of implied racism or anything like that. That's not what this is about. It's about telling the truth of his current economic policy, which is to plunder the North Sea and the Shetland oil fields to pay for his government. Exactly the same as his heroine, Mrs. Thatcher, did. It's exactly the same thing. And that's the issues in the message, not in the picture. But on the cancellation issue, the absurdity of a place that used to be a second-hand furniture showroom that now masquerades as an arts venue, a bar and a restaurant called the Leith Arches, and it's not actually even in an arch, it's on the corner, the arches are further along the street. Another example of people who read Train Spotting way back when and thought, oh, Leith, that sounds like an edgy place, I think I'll go and move there. Got there, discovered it was edgy, they don't like that, so they want to change it all. And for the past 15 to 20 years, we've had a gentrification happening in my town, where I grew up, where I live, right? A gentrification that demands of the population, the people who live and were born there, that they submit to the new rules of the incomers. It's an absurdity, an absolute absurdity. We had the artistic director of the Royal Lyceum Theatre, a guy called David Gregg, quite a well-known writer, not a big fan myself, but, you know, he tries his best, who crumbled and apologised after one Stirling University graduate found 2 tweets, for goodness sake, that he happened to like, which were not offensive in any kind of a way, but they were put out by people who were gender critical. The artistic director of the Royal Lyceum apologised to the city and to his staff. It's absolutely ridiculous. For those of us who've been around a wee while, we remember the original no platforming arguments there were at the formation of the Anti-Nazi League, back when we had real fascists on the streets, no wee ones in blue hair and tights. The fact is, the argument that went on in the left then was about the dangers of driving things underground. And in actual fact, that all we would be doing by no platforming the fascists and the Nazis, we would be doing what they do, which is to shut down all opposition and close down all mouths. These kids, and their adult compatriots who are on this mad kind of campaign to alter science, The fact that they're prepared to say someone should not be allowed to say something tells you everything you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
They are fascists themselves. They are, I call them on a regular basis, because none of them have read a book. If you call them pound shop phalangists, they don't know what a phalangist is. That just happens to predate fascism a wee bit. But maybe I'm educating them at the same time. But this current situation, we need adults to stand up. We need, and I never thought I would say this, but Susan Dalgetty, ex-Labour councillor, Labour candidate, not my biggest fan by any manner of means, has written 2 great articles this week, which are all about it's time for the adults to come back out to play and tell these people to get back in their box. We've got to stop being frightened now. We have to stop being frightened.
Yeah, there are certain people and snowflakes in our own movement who object to questions when you say, well, I don't know, can you give me some clarity on that? Oh, they'll cancel them, sack them, kick them out the party because you dare to ask a question, behave yourselves. But one thing I want to correct, there was a headline, we know our media don't get it right, but there was a big headline, Yvonne, that the South Lanarkshire Council were going to ban the Alba party from speaking, which wasn't quite true. What they were trying to do was, the truth of it was they were trying to stiff the Alba party to pay for extra security. So, you can have your meeting, but we want some extra money for security because there might be protests. I'm glad to say the Alba party told them where to sling their hook. They're not getting any extra money. But this, playing games like that, I mean, it's just kind of childish, is it not?
It's bordering on criminality. It's the sort of thing that would inspire the Sopranos, demanding money for protection. Of course, quite rightly, we've told them to do one, but it's demanding money with menaces. And of course, they're saying that the person who is the security risk is Alex Salmond. Well, it's absolute nonsense. If the one thing Alex Salmond is guaranteed to do is draw in crowds. We've got him coming to Galashiels today on a Wee Alapa book exercise. And the venue there hasn't asked for this sort of money for security. As I say, it's a protection racket. But I listened to Lloyd there with some degree of sympathy at how the gentrification of Edinburgh has happened. And I have to say, a lot of these snowflakes that have arrived and landed in Edinburgh and shot up property prices are from England. They've come up from England, side-swerved Newcastle, thank goodness, because we don't want that lot settling in Geordieland. And they've arrived in Edinburgh and they're destroying the Edinburgh Fringe. Edinburgh Fringe is world famous for being edgy and naughty, and now they're trying to destroy the Fringe, and yet they've invited comedians who make jokes about killing and raping women. They're welcome. I'm talking about Frankie Boyle, who last year made a joke about raping and killing presenter Holly Willoughby. But, why is it that that's okay? But Graham Lennon, whose chief thought crime is to say, ask the question, can a woman have a penis? Why is he being ruthlessly cancelled at one of the, 2 Fringe venues now? And what's he being cancelled for? Because he's saying that men can't become women and children shouldn't be sterilised. Leith Archers in Edinburgh that pulled the venue, they should be ashamed of themselves because they're damaging the reputation of the Edinburgh Fringe. And quite frankly, if this is what the English are doing when they come and move north, then I would say that they're not welcome and they should bugger off back down into England where they can grasp their pearls and throats and vote for Keir Starmer.
I'm glad you said that and no one else. We'd all be in trouble. But the other thing is just simple as this. I mean, if you don't like it, don't go, don't listen. It's that simple. But we're taking a lead from our government because our government did the same. They told us all, well, you can't watch our TV anymore. Why not? I'm an adult. I can watch whatever I want. It wasn't that long ago they were doing voiceovers on IRA members and members of Sinn Féin. How dare you? I'm an adult. Let me make up my own mind. And as I say to anyone that doesn't like Graham Lennon, don't go. No one's forcing you to go. It's ridiculous. I hate the cancel culture. It's a lot of nonsense. But I want to finish in some happy notes, if I can, Eva, because, I've been a lot of down. I want to congratulate the Scottish Government, which I don't do very often, but I do want to do it again today, which is the Scottish junior doctors accepted a pay settlement over 3 years. There was no threat of strike. That was all seemed to be done, respect given to employers and employees. And congratulations, but congratulations are deserved. Maybe the Health Secretary at Barclay down in London wants to pick up the phone and ask Scotland how they do it.
I'm very pleased to see this because I think that it's evidence that in Scotland, the government values the NHS and that it is an indication that in Westminster, the NHS is considered in many respects to becoming a cash cow, and there are moves towards, or increasing moves towards, privatisation. But I think in Scotland particularly, there are aspects of our health that are unfortunately peculiarly bad in Scotland. And we know that the drugs figures, unfortunately, will be out again soon. And we know that they're going to be really desperately bad. There are ongoing issues across many disciplines, but particularly regards addictions and suicide, child and adolescent mental health, and certainly adult mental health. And a lot of these aspects of health in Scotland are worse and need a different attack, if you like, or different management, or different strategies to combat than in England. And that is not exclusively, but mainly because of the impact of poverty over generations. So credit where it's due. I am really glad that the pay settlement was made in Scotland, for Scotland, by Scotland, but I think it's evidence that if we had all levers in our grasp in Scotland, we're likely to be able to do much better in every discipline, because we will create solutions that are tailor-made not just to our own better Scottish independent budget, but that are bespoke for the areas of concern and the particular needs of the people of this country, and addressing poverty and ill health and the impact that one has on the other should very much be uppermost in the minds of all politicians and, frankly, all civic society. So this is very good for Scotland, and I think that it's something that needs to be built upon and needs to be acknowledged. I think, can I say, a constitutional convention is one area where positive conduct like this can be discussed and enhanced, and we can talk positively about what we can do with the full powers of independence to address what is really such a very important aspect of the lives of every member of the population. If you've not got your health, you've got very little left to you.
Absolutely true. Hypocrisy and double standards are the name of the game in politics, as you well know, Lloyd. But all those guys, all those unionists who were shouting about the ferries being the biggest marine problem ever in the history of mankind, going back to the Ark, became very quiet when the Legionnaires' disease hit the barges of the Tory purchased boats. But the other one, they're always like shouting, "Oh, Scottish education's terrible." Exam results come out this week, Lloyd, where I believe Wales had the best results of all of the Union. Northern Ireland were second, Scotland were third, and by some distance in the rear view mirror, the kids of England had done rather badly. Our usual suspects, of course, don't want to talk about education this week, do they?
No, they don't. But one of the main reasons they don't want to talk about that is because, you know, the lack of investment in education in England has been absolutely horrifying over the past 20, 30 years. And I think there's an obvious reason for that. You know, when both of your political parties, your ruling political parties, both Conservative and Labour, and indeed the Liberal Democrats as well, when all of their senior members, the vast majority of their senior members, have gone to private or what used to be known as public schools, and then to particular universities, then I don't think they have the same level of focus on the educational needs of working people. You know, Sunak and his cohorts make it very plain that if you want an education, you pay for it. I mean, they say these things. The problem is, the people who can't pay for it, their education is supposed to be supported by the government, but clearly is not. I mean, they're having terrible problems recruiting teachers because no one wants to go into teaching, and it's a tragedy. But I genuinely believe, and we have the same problem in our country. I think this is the problem is having two systems. I don't believe it boosts equality. I don't think it boosts solidarity. I don't think it boosts the sense of community properly when you have a private education system and a state education system. And the imbalance between the two is so massive. Effectively, the kids in the private system have got two legs up long before the kids in the state system are even sitting their exams. And I think this is something that we in Scotland have to seriously address in our future. As an independent country, we have to follow, I believe we should follow the Finnish model for the creation of national solidarity, a sense of nationhood, a sense of common purpose. You've heard me saying that before, but this is a different kind of common purpose, a common purpose of people together. It takes away that leg up that so many have here. I'm sitting here in my mother's and I'm looking out the window at nearly 2 square miles of private playing fields owned by the Merchant Company Schools of Edinburgh. That's more sports facilities than every state school in this city has. And it's for the few. And you see that division in this city, particularly when you can look out at it and it's as obvious as the geography of being around you.
Yeah. So the fact is that in private education, they don't get charged VAT, whereas public schools do. They get charity status. That's got to be removed. You want a private education, I would say, yeah, go for it, but you're getting no subsidies. You're paying full VAT. You're paying full council tax. You're paying your way. You know, that's the way it should be, not subsidised in any way, shape, or form by the state.
I agree with you, Roddy, but that halfway stage doesn't address, you know, the issues of inequality in our country are so huge that simply to take away the charitable status or the VAT and let the private schools continue to run, but obviously they would cost their patrons more money. That doesn't address the central issue. The central issue is the dividing our children at a very young age into the haves and the have-nots before they've even realised where they live. I mean, the stuff I read about Finland is incredible. It's incredible. The sense of national unity that they have comes as a direct result of not separating their kids into the haves and the have-nots at age 5. And so any compromise along the way, yeah, it sounds admirable. I even advocated for it when I was in Parliament myself, take away the charitable status. But then when you think about it, that doesn't address the issue. It really doesn't address it, because the issue is we separate the haves and the have-nots at too early an age. Sorry, I'm ranting on a wee bit. I'll shut up now.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. We like good old lefty talk on here. It's the good stuff. The last thing, the clock's kicking on, Yvonne, and I remember back in 2014, when we started the campaign for a referendum for independence, we were sitting at 24, 25% or something like that. It was mid 20s, something like that. And look where we got to, go very close. The great news and opinion polls that come out this week, Jackie, can you put up, is our comrades, our cousins down in Wales, in Welsh Wales, they're up to 38%. This is an all-time high for independence in Wales, in Cumbernauld. This is fabulous news for the Welsh people, and it could be great news for us in Scotland too. You know, let's have them fighting as many fronts as they've got to keep this union intact.
Yeah, everything that we've discussed today, it's like chasing our tails. It all goes back to one thing: independence. You know, that image of Rishi Sunak with oil dripping down his face. That's our bloody oil. And yet in Scotland, we're paying the highest energy prices out of the whole of the UK. And where are the dividends? Certainly not in education. And dare I say it, let's look into and explore the possibility of scrapping all private education and see and look at the bigger picture and look at countries like Finland. How is it affecting their performance? You know, being told as a child that you're not worth spending money on, you've just got the state education. It's very demoralizing and demotivating, being told that somebody is better than you purely by, as Eva would say, dint of birth. It's all of this is wrong. We need to create a level playing field. How do we do that? Through independence. How do we keep our oil? Through independence. How do we protect the health service? Through independence. You know, how stupid are people? I don't want to insult the people of the voters in Scotland, but how bloody stupid are you not to realise that the answer to everything that we have discussed today is independence? So that Scotland's big enough and strong enough and has the resources to support itself. And we've got to stop these unionists whittering on and whispering in our ear, oh, we can't do it, we can't do it. We should ignore the naysayers and forge ahead. And I think that, you know, Humza Yousaf saying the biggest problem is trying to get a referendum, and he's waving a white flag. He needs to clear off as well. We just need to get rid of all of the naysayers and just start thinking, yes, we can.
Yes.
You know, we can do this. We can achieve this. We can be a great nation. We can't tie our fortunes to England. It's bloody sinking. Since Elizabeth Truss tanked the economy, England is going down the Swanee, and we don't want to be dragged down with them.
On your comment, you're quite right not to be insulting people, Yvonne. That's my job. I do the insulting. It's in my job description. I've got it here. Friends, comrades, all that sort of stuff. Thanks for being here and giving up your very valuable time. It was a joy as always to speak to you, and I hope you folks enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed talking to my friends here. And until we see you again soon, please take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.